In this tutorial, I'll show you how to model this protein shaker lid here. So just in a new file here, let's just go ahead and delete everything. And as always, we'll go ahead and bring in our reference images, which you can find in the resources section of my Discord server. I'm going to go Alt-R to reset the rotation, R, X, and 90 to rotate 90 along the X-axis, and G, Y, and 7 just to push it back an arbitrary amount so that we've got some space here to work on our model. And I'm just going to push this up on the Z-axis just until the base of the reference image is roughly sitting in line with our 3D cursor there. So let's go ahead, we'll bring in a cube, and I'm just going to go ahead and add 3 levels of subdivision to this. Like so. And then just using Control A with my cursor hovering over the subdivision surface modifier, we can apply it. Tapping into edit mode, if we use Alt, Shift, and S, and then press 1 for a factor of 1, we can spherize or 2-sphere the model just to make it more spherical. And then we can just go ahead and delete the bottom half and bring this back up. And you can see just like a little crease down the bottom here. Just want to roughly get the bottom of our model lined up with that crease. Scale it up to match the size. Get there, and then S and Z to scale down on the Z-axis just to roughly match the curvature. Cool, so then if we go back into edit mode, and just in vertex select, I'm going to select everything but the bottom row of vertices, and I'm just going to press S to scale and bring it in just to match the curvature of the shape a little bit better. And one final thing we want to do is just back in object mode, go Control A and apply the scale, otherwise we'll get some weird effects as we try to work through the model here. Cool. So I'm just going to go Shift D, and I'm just going to rename this to be _shrink. This is just going to be a backup guide mesh, just in case we cause any unwanted distortions in our modeling process. So I'm just going to set this version to be shade smooth, and I'm going to have a 4x subdivision surface modifier on it. And I'm just going to set the viewport display to be display as bounds. And I'm just going to hide that. Just going to have it there just in case we run into any unwanted distortions. And before we start modeling, because we are 3D modelers and we are lazy, we just want to work on half of the model. So I'm just going to cut it in half and slap on a mirror modifier. Now nothing's going to work, so what we'll need to do is disable the X-axis, enable the Y-axis, and as always, we'll enable clipping as well. Cool, alright, so let's focus on getting the back section of the model first, and then we'll come and worry about the front. So the first thing we want to do is figure out where this detail at the back here is going to exist on our model. And so if we look at it, we can sort of see that it kind of intersects down around here, which is pretty close to this edge along here. So just to clarify that, that's the third edge along from the middle. So I've just used Alt to select that. And I'm just going to go Control E and mark this as a sharp, not because I want the edge to actually be sharp, it's just going to help me keep track of where this detail is going to be cut in. Cool. So we can see it kind of leads into this area here. So I'm just going to use K, click on this vertex here, C and Z to cut a straight line, and then Z to cut through the mesh. Click up here, hit enter. And then I'm just going to dissolve the original edges there. And I'm going to mark these as sharp, once again, just to keep track of everything. And I'm going to remove these as being sharps, because that's not helping me anymore. Cool, and then at the back here, so technically we could go ahead, do Control R, cut in a loop here. I don't really think it's worth it for what we're doing. So instead, I'm just going to use this vertex here as the point where this will terminate at the back. I'm going to go K, click on that vertex, C and Z again, come up, click, enter. And I'm just going to mark this as a sharp, once again, just so we can see the area in which we're trying to block out. And I'll just clear this as a sharp. And I'll dissolve this edge because we don't need it anymore. Cool, so now we can see the area that we want to extrude and model in. There's just one more problem. This area here, so this edge, is a bit curved, and that's just going to be a bit of a nightmare when it comes to our modeling and extrusions. So we'll just use K for the knife tool again, and I'm just going to cut between this vertex and this top vertex up here. And then I'm just going to select these middle verts, delete those verts, and then we can just do the same for these faces in here. And I'm just going to clear all the sharps now because we've got a very clear indication of where our focus area is. Cool. So I'm going to select this row of verts here, Shift S, and put our cursor to selected. And we wanted to find this curve at the top here, right? So what we'll do is we'll go ahead, we'll bring in a circle, and I'm just going to change the verts count from 32 to 16, and then RX and 90. And I just want to drag this down on the Z-axis until this vertex at the top here roughly matches up with the apex of the curve here. So just bring this down. And I might just bring it along on the X as well, just so it's a little bit more center. So somewhere around there. So tapping into edit mode, I just want to select the topmost vertex, shift and S and cursor to selected. Then back in object mode, we're just going to change the transform pivot point to the 3D cursor. Oops. Scale down, and I'm just going to get the circle to roughly match up with the curvature of our reference. So that's close enough. It's not perfect, but remember, it's a reference image, right? We don't need to match it one-to-one. It's just giving us a reference of the shape that we're trying to build. So with that, I'm just going to go Shift D and duplicate this circle. I'm just going to press H to hide it. We'll come back to that later. But for right now, let's just focus on this one. So if I go onto a top-down view here, you'll notice the cutout that we've got and the circle that we've got are a little bit misaligned at the moment. So I'm just going to go back into the lid that we've got so far. Still with this edge selected, and I'm just going to go S, Y, and 0 to scale that to make it completely flat, and now it's all sitting flush with the circle that we brought in as well. And speaking of the circle, let's go ahead. I'm going to select the bottom 7 verts here. I'm just going to delete those verts, and now we've just got a semicircle at the top here. Back into edit mode, object mode, and then I'm just going to shift select our lid, Control J to join the meshes together, and then we can start to make this all one coherent mesh. So I'm going to grab this vertex and the vertex at the corner here, M, and merge it last. And then at the back here, select this vertex and this one at the corner, and F to either fill a face or make an edge. Cool, so now we want to fill this in, and I'm just going to show you something here. So if I go ahead and fill in this face, and then continue to fill the rest of these in, you'll notice once we get to the end here, we can fill in a quad, so, you know, cool, quad-based topology, right? But notice how all of these edges are really skewed. It doesn't look nice, and it also sort of gives us an unfavourable topology flow as we're trying to sort of cut things in. Not that we will, but, you know, this is probably more from an aesthetics thing, but also on more complicated models, it does help to keep your topology more organised and sort of keep things straight so you have a better understanding of where your edge flow is going. So what we're going to do, very simple fix, I'm just going to go Control R, I'm just going to cut in a loop to this area here. And if that does cause any distortions once we bring in the shrink wrap modifier, the subdivision surface modifier, my bad, we will be able to fix that with the guide mesh and a shrink wrap modifier. So we can go ahead and fill that one in, and then we'll just continue to press F. And you'll notice we still run into an issue here. It doesn't fill in perfectly. So what we are going to do is we're actually going to fill in an n-gon here, which might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but trust me, we'll make it work once we've sort of sorted out the rest of this area. But at the moment, just fill in that n-gon and we'll come and clean it up later. So with that, let's go ahead and select these top verts here. Go E and just drag along the y-axis until it clips into the middle. Go Control R, just add in another loop through here. And we can just go and fill in these faces to start to connect up the rest of the mesh. So now we have something like this. Cool. So the next thing we need to do, so we sort of need to hollow this area out so we can have a cavity that will then house a cylinder, which will be connected to the rest of the sort of cap part here, right? So, but what I want to do is, because it needs to be hollow, but there also needs to be a bit of a support on this part here, so it needs to have a little bit of thickness to it. So we're just going to need another loop through here. Go Control R, so we'll just cut in another loop. And you'll notice at the back here, this doesn't work properly because there's a triangle as a face here, so it just terminates and turns this into a quad, which, you know, you'd think, good, now it's a quad. We can actually work with a triangle here, and it's not going to work to our detriment despite it being on a curved surface. So what we'll do is we'll select this edge, we'll select the bottom edge, we'll come down to edge in our menu here, and we'll subdivide. And then just using K for the knife tool, we can just join this together. And now we have a loop that runs the whole way through the mesh, as it should. And then let's just go ahead, select these edges at the back here. I'm just going to press N to bring up the end panel, edit loop tools, and we'll just go space just to evenly distribute those out. I'm not going to do it for up here, because the width that I've got going along here is pretty much the width that I want to have for the curve at the back here. So with that, let's just go ahead and delete the faces on the inside here. So I'm just going to get those ones, delete those faces, and now we've started to fill out carve out the housing for where the cylinder is going to be. So I'm just going to go back into object mode, press Alt-H to unhide everything. I'll just hide the guide mesh again. And then with the circle that we duplicated earlier, I just want to bring this into line. So I'm just going to change our transform pivot point back to the bounding box. And then in our snapping tools, I just want to change the snap base to active and the snap target to vertex. Then if I press G, Y, and hold down Control, I can snap this up to the topmost vertex here, or any of these vertexes along this area here. And now we've got this in line. Cool. So let's just go ahead, tab into edit mode. I'm just going to fill this in as a face, and then I'm press I to do an insert. I'm just going to bring this in just a little bit. So just something like that. The reason I want to do this is because we want a little bit of depth at the back here. So when we start to fill this in, and it'll probably make more sense once we actually start to model it. But so we'll have the back here, right? And then we want a little bit of depth, and we want like a little bridge just sort of sitting here before it gets into the curve that's going to link up on this side. But we'll also have a little connecting bridge here, and just give everything a little bit more support, right? So that might be a little bit confusing at the moment, but it'll make more sense once we start doing the modelling. I just don't want the sort of peak of everything to come up here like this, otherwise you'll get some really horrible pinching on a really big pole here, and it just won't look nice. But anyway, let's do the actual modelling instead of trying to explain it, because it should make more sense. So first of all, I'm just going to go K with the knife tool, and I'm just going to cut between the centre point of the circle, just to separate it. And let's just tab back into object mode. I'm going to shift select the rest of the model, Control J to join things together. I'm going to press A to select everything, M, and dissolve vertices, or merge by distance, sorry. So now we've got this. So this will have connected all the vertices that were overlapping here. This one is still loose because we don't have a loop around the back yet, but we will fix that up in a bit. But what I want to do first is let's just go ahead and delete these faces here, because they're going to become non-manifold faces once we extrude this. Extrude this face, pull it on the Y, and we'll delete that face, and then we'll also delete this top face here. So now we've sort of got this cavity going on. And I'm just going to select the inside here. And by the way, to do this, I probably haven't explained it. I'm just holding down Control to pick the shortest path. It just saves you having to manually hold down Shift and select everything. It's just a lot quicker. And then if we just press F, we can fill that in. And now we've got a little bit of a dilemma here, right? Because as I said, we sort of want like a bridge between these areas, right? And at the moment, we don't really have a nice setup here, but what we'll do is we'll just select this vertex and press V to rip. And that hasn't ripped exactly the way I wanted, so I'm just going to hide that. And I'll do V again and rip. Now I've got the vertex I want here. Press G, Z, and just pull this down, holding down Control, sorry, to snap it to this vertex here. Just go press Alt-H to unhide the other vertices. And I'm just going to select everything M and merge by distance. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to merge this down at last, and I'm going to merge this down at last as well. That's probably an easier way of having done it. I just did that in the most roundabout way possible, sorry. Anyway, let's go Control R, we'll add a loop cut in here, and I'm just going to roughly line this up with this edge over here as well. And then we can just start to fill this in. So that's the little bridge I was talking about here. I don't know if bridge is the best word for it, but that's what we've got. I'm just going to press double tap G, sorry. Just bring this down, just roughly match the curvature of everything. Just somewhere around there, that should be alright. Then, for the back here, I'm going to select these two vertices, E to extrude, and then G, X, and hold down Control to snap to this back vertex. And then we can fill this in. And then we can go ahead and connect this in with the rest of our mesh. Cool. So this is looking pretty good at the moment. You know, we've got our extrusion in, but I can see a problem here, and I'm not sure if you guys can, but we have incorrect normals on the model at the moment, and we can just see it where these darker faces are being shaded. But to make it more clear, let's just come down into our viewport overlays, and let's just enable face orientation. So these red faces mean that they are oriented in the incorrect way. So the normals are facing the wrong direction. And if yours doesn't look like this, if it's blue everywhere, I'll just show you how to fix that because I find that a headache to look at. If we just go to our preferences in our 3D viewport, and if you just scroll down, you'll find face orientation back. So that's set to red, cool. The face orientation front, if you just remove the alpha, it'll just have it show your matte cap and not the blue. Once you've done that, just save your preferences, and then you'll have something that looks more like this, which is a lot easier on the eyes. So all I'm going to do, press A and then Alt and N, and let's recalculate the outside, and now everything looks nice. If by chance recalculate by outside doesn't work, and let's say we still have a face like this, you can always just go Alt N and just manually flip things if Blender's not calculating it correctly. Cool, so on the inside here, I'm just going to add an inset onto this face here. And I'm just going to clean the end gun up a little bit, just with one loop through, or one cut through there, sorry, I should say. If you want, you are more than welcome to go ahead and grid fill this. Like if you want to do this to be completely quad based and you don't want any semblance of n-gons or tries or anything of the sorts, you're more than welcome to do it. It'll probably be a bit of a headache, so as you can see, you can resolve it like that. I'm not too pedantic about it because this is a completely flat face, and even when subdivided, it won't cause any distortions or anything, so I'm happy to leave it like that. Cool. So, let's go ahead and let's check a subdivision surface modifier onto this. And I'm going to bring this up to 4, and I'm going to set this to shade smooth. And let's start to go ahead and crease up some of these edges here. So I'm just going to go around. Once again, I'm just sort of alternating between doing Shift Select and Control Select. So just any of the hard edges that you should expect to see on the model. So around there, down the bottom here, that edge there. Cool. I think that should be good. We'll notice if we've missed anything because it will be all weirdly smoothed out. So I've just gone Shift E 0.55 there, sorry. And then I'll just toggle the subdiv back on. Cool, so that looks pretty good. We've got some nice hard edges on everything now. But there's a bit of a problem with the outside here. Notice how pretty much everywhere else we've got these nice crisp edges on the model. And on the outside here, there's like, I don't know, a bit of pinching. The edge normal isn't consistent. It's all a bit over the place. It doesn't look very nice. So what we need is we need a support loop on the inside. So we sort of need something that runs up and then matches the shape, but on the inside to add a nice support loop. So we need pretty much exactly that shape. So I'll show you a pretty easy way to accomplish that. So let's just go ahead, I'm going to select this edge and this edge here and Control X to dissolve them. And then I'll do this in vertex select mode, it'll make it a little bit easier to see. I'm going to use K for the knife tool, and I'm just going to click down here, and then so I can see a vertex here, so I'm just going to bring this up, click roughly in line with that vertex, see another one here, so I'll click around there, another one here, somewhere there. This one I'll click onto the edge, and same as that one there, as well as that one. Another vertex there, so I'll click roughly around there, another one here, and then I'll click back down at this vertex here. And don't worry too much about the positions of these, we'll clean it all up so it doesn't have to be exact. I've just done it freehand, so there's been no exact reason behind where I've placed them, just trying to eyeball it. And then once we've got that, we can go back with the knife tool and we can just cut these in so that they're actually connected. We've got nice quads on the outside there. And then we've got nice quads on the outside there. Cool. So to just make this a little bit more even, because if we go and look at the subdiv now, we've got a nice edge, but we can sort of just clean up the display of the topology just a little bit here. So just an edge select, I'm going to go ahead, select that loop that we just made, double tap G and press E, and then if we do an edge slide, we can sort of just bring it a little bit closer out, just give some better support. And don't worry too much about it distorting things down here. We'll clean all this up in just a little bit, and if it gets too out of hand, we've still got the guide mesh. So I'm actually just going to select between these points here, so sorry, just these edges, and I'm just going to use the loop tool space operation, and then using the knife tool, I'm just going to cut between here and between here. So we do have a triangle here, and similar to the n-gon on the inside here, when we subdivide it, it will subdivide just fine because it's on a flat surface. and it's not going to cause us any problems because all of our quads that are on the outside here are supporting the edge loop. So if we had this triangle against, this crease here, it'd be more problematic because, you'd sort of get stretching and pinching and yada, yada, yada. And same with these n-gons, there's a barrier of quads supporting the edge, so the placements of these is just fine. But once again, if you don't want to have quads or triangles on your model, that's also okay. I'm just going to show you a practical application of how to use them. Cool, alright, so that's looking pretty good. The only thing I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to select... Oh, actually, sorry, we're missing a support loop. My bad. We'll just go Control R, and we'll just add a support loop through here. It's going to go GGE. Drag this down a little bit. And that's just going to help us sort of tighten up the creasing down at the bottom here. And then the other one I wanted to do, sorry, before I realised that that was incorrectly placed, I'm just going to select this loop running through the middle here. And I just want to tighten this up. See how it's a bit curved? It doesn't really look that nice. I'm just going to double tap G, just slide it in. And that just sort of tightens up the corner a little bit more, makes it look a little bit nicer. And we can probably do the same here because this edge sort of bleeds out a little bit more than I'd like. So I might just grab these, double tap G, and just push it in a little bit. Just get something like that. Cool. So let's just have a look at the curvature of this. So I can see a little bit of distortion down here where we've added in an extra loop. And you can very easily see some distortion running through the middle here. So, before we resort to using our guide mesh, let's just do some general spacing of all of this. I'm just going to change the matte cap back because that's really harsh. So I'm just going to go ahead, select between points, like so, and then I'm just going to use the space operation. So just try to more evenly distribute all of our topology here. And then I'll do the same around the side here. So I'm just going to select these points, space, and then do it for these ones here. Space those out. So it's still not perfect, it's not completely evenly distributed, but if I just go look at the matte cap now, that's a little bit harsher. It's still not perfect. You can still see a little bit of distortion, but for the most part, I'd say that's pretty okay. Yeah, I'm not too concerned with that. Getting a little bit of pinching there as well, but if we wanted to clean that up, that's an easy one. So if we just select this vertex, I'm just going to turn the viewport overlays off. I'm just going to go Alt-S, and sort of push it in just a little bit. I think that's helped clean it up a bit. Still a bit of pinching, but I think that's helped just clean it up a bit. So that was before, and then that's after. So still there, but a little bit less noticeable. And we can actually do the same for these poles here. So there's a pole there and a pole here. And this is being pedantic. But if you notice, as we scroll over, you can see just a little bit of distortion. Just as it sort of hits where that pole is. So you can do the same. You can just go Alt-S and just push it in just a minuscule amount. You can still just see it, but yeah, it just helps it clean it up a little bit. That's being overly pedantic, but just trying to show you how to clean up some poles and pinching on curved surfaces. Anyway, let's get to the front end of this and get the circular cutout done. So it's up the back here, so we want to use this edge, and we'll use the second bottommost edge here as well. So I'm going to select 4 in, so I'm going to select this one down to this one. Cool, alright. So with that selection, let's just tab out of edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and Control A to apply the mirror modifier. And with that, actually I'll keep my loop tools open. So now we've got this selection here, so it's a square at the moment. Let's just go ahead and we'll use the circle loop tools operation. I'm just going to turn off the subdiv for a second to make it less messy. And we have destroyed the model a little bit here. But what we'll do is in the circle settings, just untick flatten, because we don't want to flatten it. We actually want to keep the curvature of the lid. And we'll just go into a top-down orthographic view here. We just want to adjust the angle so that this edge here, right, becomes straight again with that x-axis line there. So I'm just going to adjust the angle here, and you can hold down shift to get a more precise movement. And I'm just going to go roughly until it looks straight. So somewhere around negative 9.5 for me seems to work. The angle might be different for you, it just depends. But as you can see, that now sort of runs pretty straight down the center there. And another thing, if the circle that you've made is overlapping or clipping outside of the surrounding verts at all, what we can do is we can just enable the radius, which is sort of screwed up a little bit here, and then you can always just adjust the size of the circle. So I might actually just bring it in a bit myself just to give a little bit more spacing between these verts here. Still not going to be perfect, but that makes it just a little bit more manageable. So something like that I'm happy with. And then just using C for the circle select, I'm just going to go select all of these interior verts here and just delete those vertices. So let's get to the final stretch here. So I'm just going to Alt select that inner loop. I'm going to go E to extrude, just bring it up a bit on the Z, then S, Z, and 0 to scale down to the 0. And then I'm just going to line this edge up with our reference image there. So something like that. And then if we go Control R, we'll just add an edge loop here, G, G, E, and do I need to, no, just E. And we'll just drag this down just a little bit just to help crease up that edge a bit. I don't really think we need to use a crease there. I think just using a loop does a fine job. Cool, alright, so we're on the home stretch here. We just need to do the cap for the lid here. So let's go into edit mode. I'm just going to go Shift D this edge, P, and separate by selection just so we can work on this independently. And let's just go ahead. I'm going to extrude this up, and we're going to scale it out a bit. I'm just looking at the back of the reference image for this one, so just scaled it out to give it that little bit of the brim. Then E, and I'm just going to bring this up to extrude. And I'm just going to shade smooth quickly because I've noticed it's lost that. We go E, S, Shift and Z to scale on everything but the Z axis and bring it out. And I'm just looking at the front of the model, reference here, just to bring that out. Go E, and we'll bring that up again on the Z axis. Just go somewhere around there. Cool. And just for visual presentation, let's just go ahead and crease up some of these edges here as well. So just Shift to E 0.55. Alright, and now we just need to get this all to sit in with like a little cylinder component of our model here. So, an easy way to accomplish that is, let's just go ahead, we'll just select this middle vertex here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and we'll bring in a circle, and make sure it's at 16 verts, and we'll just go rotate X 90 degrees, and let's just scale this in just until you can see just some of the bottom edges pop through. So that will be just about a good enough size. It's probably not going to sit exactly flush. You could scale it up a bit or adjust the position, but I think this should be alright. And so what we want to do is, with the cap that we've started modelling, I want to go ahead and cut this in half. So just delete half the faces. We'll bring in another mirror modifier, and we'll set the axes to Y again. And just drag the mirror modifier up above the subdivision surface modifier. That will just help clean everything up. And as always, we need to enable clipping. And it doesn't look like these edges in the middle are quite meeting properly. So I'm just going to pull them in on the Y just a little bit, just to make sure it all sits nice and flush. Cool. So what we want to do now, let's go ahead, we'll select that circle that we brought in, Shift select the cap and Control J. We can just join them together. And then you can select the circle again, extrude and just bring it in on the Y, and now that's merged at the center. I'm just going to set it to smooth again. Cool. So let's go ahead, delete these back two faces here. So we'll just delete those faces, and I think we can leave those faces, they're fine. Cool. And so we'll select this edge here. Actually, no, sorry, my bad. We'll delete these faces here, and we'll build it back up later. So we'll just select this edge here, and I'm just going to extrude and bring it back along the x-axis just until it sort of hits this point where the cap disappears behind the yellow part, and then just drag down on the z-axis just so that this roughly conforms to our reference image. And I'll just grab the bottom vertex and I'll just drag it down so it matches the bottom edge. There's a little bit of curvature in the actual one, but I'm pretty okay with the way that this looks. We don't need to put an awful lot of detail into it. I think it's pretty alright the way it is. And the only other adjustment I'm going to make is I'm just going to select this edge, G, X, hold down Control, and, G, Y, hold down Control and snap it to the farthest edge of the cylinder that we've got here. And I'm just going to go ahead and merge this at last, and I'll merge this at last down here. Cool, so now the only thing we're missing is we just need an extra loop, so just Control R to add that in. And then I can just merge these ones at last here to fill that. And these are going to become interior faces, so we can delete those because we're not going to need them. Select this edge, we'll extrude and we'll push it in until it clips. And same with the bottom here. Cool. And let's just go and Control R, we'll add in another loop through here just so we can start to build out a set of faces at the bottom. Like that, and I'm just going to do an edge slide here to just make this sort of conform more to that circular shape. Maybe we could have left those faces from before, but oh well. And we can just start to crease all of this up as well. So I need to crease it along the bottom, on there. And I just realised we have made an n-gon there, so we'll just go Control R, and I'm just going to go GY and snap that across to the other edge loop, and then I'm just going to select everything M and dissolve by distance. And we'll crease that edge up as well. And we've got another n-gon there, so I'll just go Control R, cut this in, same thing, GY, hold down Control to snap. And by distance, oops. Okay, that didn't seem to work, I'll just merge it last manually. Alright, and the last thing we need to do is just fill this in. So to make it easier, I'm just going to apply the mirror modifier. We'll alt select all of these verts in the center. We'll just press F and fill in a big n-gon here. We'll fix that up in a second. So we'll go I to do an inset, just to give a support loop around the outer edge. Shift E -1 to just remove the crease on the inside because we don't need that there. And this one, what we can do, so we can select this interior loop here. We can get grid fill, and mine's actually worked perfectly straight away. You might need to muck around with the values a little bit, and we can actually do the same at the bottom here as well. So we can just fill this face in, I to inset to just add that support loop around the edge. Shift E -1, let's delete that face, and we can use grid fill the same down the bottom here as well. So this one hasn't done it automatically for me, so I'll go a span of 4. And yep, I think that looks alright there. Cool, and we don't really need to worry about filling in these faces. You can if you want, but if you think about it in the context of the model, you're never going to see those faces anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. Cool, and I'm just going to add an edge loop through here and sort of pull it up just to help with that crease there. And I might do the same at the back here, just pull this in a little bit as well, just help with that crease at the back. And then the last thing we need to do is just sort of the bottom part here. So let's go ahead, alt select the bottom edge, okay, E, scale on everything but the, oh actually no, we'll just scale, it'll be fine. We'll bring it out roughly until it matches the outside of the reference here. Extrude again, pull down on the Z until it matches at the bottom. And I'm actually just going to select these faces here, S, Shift and Z to scale on everything but the Z, and just adjust the size a bit just so it matches with the reference a little bit better. And finally I'm just going to alt select this edge, Control B, and then I'll scroll up on my scroll wheel a few times just to add a few more segments. And I think that looks pretty good. Chuck the subdiv back on, and there we go. That's your completed model. I can see just a little bit of pinching through here. We're actually getting a pole terminating there. I think the better solution might actually be, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to hide both of these, Control R, cut in the loop. Okay, and then let's just connect these. Like so, and then we can go ahead and dissolve that. So now we have an n-gon sitting there. This actually kind of does form the loop that I was going to make anyway. I think this probably just does it in a better way. We'll hide these here. So we'll go Control R. Cut this in, K. That fills in a nice quad there. Control R to add another loop here. And another loop here as well. K. Cut that down. And then I reckon we'll just select these, M, merge at center, and just do the same here, merge at center. And that might get a little bit dicey there just because of how close the verts are, but let's just have a look. Let's clean this up just a little bit. So we'll just go ahead and I'm just going to select just those. Yeah, we'll just go with those 4 edges there, and we'll just do the same on the other side. There, and I'm just simply going to go ahead and do a space operation. Fine. Yeah, just to help clean things up just a little bit. Bring everything back. So yeah, there you go. That's your final model. Hopefully I've helped sort of demystify some of the more complicated matters of, doing the extrusions on a curved surface and also adding in a circular extruded detail onto a curved surface. So well done by making it to the end, and I will see you guys all in the next one.